Welcome to The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis. I am your host, Cicely Davis.
Welcome back, American Savages, to The Savage Truth. I am your host, Cicely Davis. So glad to have you join me. We're going to do something a little different today. We're not going to talk about any political events or any culture events, but we are going to talk about an event. We are going to talk about something that has occurred that impacts us all. We're going to talk about the passing of a great man, a true freedom trailblazer. I am, of course, speaking of the great Mr. David Horowitz. Today's episode is a hard one for me. It has been a tough week. I've been traveling and in deep thought and reflection. So this week, if you haven't heard, April 29th specifically, I lost, friends and family lost, and America has lost one of its most fearless defenders of truth, of liberty, and the values that underpin the Republic. I'm, of course, talking about David Horowitz, who was an author. He's a thinker, a warrior for freedom. He has passed away. Now, this episode is dedicated to his family, his friends, his colleagues, and to every American who has ever drawn courage from his unflinching words. And today, I have the honor of honoring his life, his mission, and his lasting legacy. Of course, I'm speaking of the great Mr. David Horowitz, the journey from the left to the right.
Will you condemn Hamas here and now?
I'm sorry, what?
Will you condemn Hamas?
Would I condemn Hamas?
As a terrorist and genocidal organization?
Are you asking me to put myself on a cross?
So you won't. I actually have had this experience many times. You didn't read the pamphlet because the pamphlet is chapter and verse. Main connection is that the MSA is part of the Muslim Brotherhood network.
I meant if I say something, I'm sure that I will be arrested for reasons of Homeland Security.
If you condemn Hamas, Homeland Security will arrest you.
If I support Hamas, because your question forces me to condemn Hamas. If I support Hamas, I look really bad.
If you don't condemn Hamas, obviously you support it. I'm a Jew. The head of Hezbollah has said that he hopes that we will gather in Israel so he doesn't have to hunt us down globally. For it or against it?
For it.
Just to give you a little background, he was born 1939 into a household of Communist Party members. A lot of people do not know that. It's hard to imagine now, knowing the man that he became, but his early years were shaped by the far left ideologies of his parents. He attended Columbia and UC Berkeley, becoming a prolific writer, and quickly rose through the ranks of the New Left during the 1960s. He co-founded Ramparts magazine, which was a radical leftist publication that challenged the status quo with fiery conviction, to say the least. But what made David Horowitz different was his integrity, his character, his intellect. Okay, so when the Black Panther Party, an organization he once championed, was implicated in the brutal murder of his friend Betty Van Patter, David didn't look away. He didn't run away. He confronted it. And that moment changed his life and therefore those who have known him forever. He began a long, often lonely journey of intellectual and moral reckoning, one that would lead him away from the radical party, the radical left, and toward the values of the American founding. He was often scorned, ridiculed, even threatened for turning his back on progressivism. And I am someone who born into the Black monolith. I understand that completely. This was something that I really resonated with me about his story. But he never flinched. He had truly seen the face of radicalism, and he dedicated the rest of his life to exposing it. In 1988, David founded what would become the David Horowitz Freedom Center, to which, of course, is the backing and the foundation of this show. If his earlier years were marked by rebellion against the establishment, these years were marked by devotion to freedom, to national security, and to Western values, and all in general, just simply dedicated to America, to lifting and empowering those with hopes and aspirations of joining in the fight to keep America free and liberated. So a lot of people don't know Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, Brandon Straka. These were people who started out and got their backing with the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Okay. This wasn't just an installation. It's not just an institution, the Horowitz Freedom Center. It was a movement. And through it, Mr. Horowitz led campaigns against political correctness, against radical Islam, campus censorship, and the left's long march through America's cultural institutions. What he did was he launched Front Page magazine, as you know, and began the Academic Bill of Rights, which pushed back against the ideological uniformity poisoning all of our universities. And of course, we're still fighting that to this day. He debated professors, he challenged media elites, he stood up to the mobs, and he refused to be silenced. Okay. He was the absolute trailblazer. He also mentored young conservative writers and thinkers and activists, offering them not just advice, but purpose. You didn't have to agree with him on every issue to respect the force of his conviction. David didn't just speak truth to power. He shouted it, he printed it, he debated it, and he lived it every moment of his life. He believed in facts, he believed in history, and in the power of ideas to change the world, to advance America. And he proved time and time and time again that courage is contagious. He was a champion of conservative America. David Horowitz was not a man who cared much for trends. He didn't follow the polls or soften his tone to win popularity. He wrote with fire, and he fought with facts. He authored dozens of books, including Radical Sun, The Black Book of the American Left, Unholy Alliance, and Big Agenda, of which, of course, I all own, and then several more. So it was a blueprint for defeating the progressive agenda in America. He was one of the first to sound the alarm on growing radicalism in the Democrat Party, long before it became fashionable to do so. He saw what many refused to see, that America's enemies were not just across the seas, but in our universities, working in our bureaucracies, all three branches of government, and distorting truth in our media. He fought for an America rooted in individual liberty, moral clarity, and constitutional principles. And he did it all with the urgency of a man who knew what was at stake: America's freedom. To David, this wasn't just politics. It was spiritual warfare for the soul of a nation, for its future, and for the future of Americans yet to come. He had an enduring legacy, of course, which is woven into the very fabric of the American conservative movement. As the founder of the Horowitz Freedom Center and Front Page magazine, he created platforms that championed free speech, challenged the status quo, and armed patriots with intellectual firepower in the battle of ideas. He was just such a smart, brilliant man. His bold, unapologetic style set a new standard for confronting radical leftist ideology head on, never with hesitation, always with clarity and courage. Through his tireless efforts, Horowitz inspired generations of thinkers, activists, and leaders to stand firm in defense of freedom, individual liberty, and the constitutional values that define the American way of life. More than just a political figure, David Horowitz was a cultural warrior who transformed his mission to awaken the conscience of an entire nation. His fearless voice became a beacon for truth in an age increasingly clouded by censorship and ideological extremism. In his life, he modeled what it meant to reject complacency and embrace the hard work of defending America's founding principles. This was a brave man. He was a fighter. He was intelligent, and he used that intelligence to empower Americans, to empower the height of education when it came to the Constitution, and making sure that we were all civically educated to know what and when and how to fight for America and its future. And though he is no longer with us, his words, his ideas, and institutions live on, definitely through me and this podcast and all that work on my team, throughout the entire board of the Freedom Center and beyond. His intent lives on through institutions. He's challenging, provoking, and igniting the hearts of those who believe in liberty. His legacy is not merely remembered. It continues to shape the fight for America's soul. And this is what has been on my heart since the 29th. David Horowitz didn't just write books. He didn't just give speeches. He didn't just empower people. He wrote the playbook for intellectual resistance. He armed conservatives with arguments. He gave dissidents a voice, and he stood against the cultural tide, and he stood tall. And he was a truth teller in a world of echo chambers. He was a warrior in a time of cowards. And now that he is gone, it's up to us. It's up to each and every one of us to carry his banner forward. So to his family and his friends, we say thank you. Thank you for sharing this man with America. His legacy will absolutely not be forgotten. To those who never knew him, pick up one of his books, please. Go to Front Page Magazine. Tune into this podcast to learn about him and the influence and the impact of such a great trailblazer. Read his words. I'll share a few videos and pictures, as you can see, just so you can get a taste of how truly great and inspiring and intelligent and strong and brave this man was. Let them stir something in you, his words. Let them awaken your own fight for truth. David Horowitz once said, "Inside every progressive is a totalitarian screaming to get out." He spent his life warning us of what happens when we ignore that scream. So please, let's not ignore it. Let us remember him not just in mourning, but in mission. That's it for today's episode, friends. That is what I call a true savage truth. And if you've been moved by David Horowitz's life and work, share this tribute, please. Talk about his legacy. Pick up one of his books and never be afraid to speak truth, especially when it costs you everything. Rest in power, David Horowitz. You lit the torch. We'll carry it from here. And until next time, stand firm, stay free, and speak boldly. God bless David Horowitz. Please like, share, subscribe, and leave a positive review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And remember, as always, as David did, to be bold, be strong, be faithful, and be true. Till next time, I'm Cicely.
The Savage Truth with Cicely Davis is a production of Front Page Magazine and the David Horowitz Freedom Center. Reproduction of this podcast without express written consent is prohibited.